trust the person in the green uniform. You hand them your map, your directions, maybe your life. But what if the person sent to protect the woods is the first place danger shows up? That's what started to happen to me. One small call, one missing hiker, and suddenly every back road and every trail register felt like a bad decision. I'd been a forest ranger in upstate New York for 7 years. Adirondacks in the summer, Catskills in the shoulder seasons. I knew the trails the way most people know their own street. My mornings were coffee, radio check, and a sweep of the trailheads. Check the boards, log the mileage, flip the go bag into the truck. People expect rangers to be calm, memorized with maps and procedures. They don't expect us to find human things where only pine and rock should be. There's a comfort in routine. You learn the rhythm of a park, the way the fog lifts off a marsh, the hours when hikers are likely to forget water, the old half-bare sections of trail where people slide and splinter. We keep a log, name, license plate, where they said they were going. If somebody doesn't sign out, it's a small red flag. Most of the time, it's a false alarm. Sometimes, it's a broken ankle. Rarely, it's not. It started with a single small disruption. A backpack, zippered open on the bench at midnight. Mud on the bench, not the neat boot scrape you get from a clumsy hiker. An imprint, like someone turned and dragged their toes. The trail cam near the lot had been knocked. No footprints leaving the lot, only a fading trail toward the dark. We searched for hours and found nothing that night. The next morning, a set of boot prints that led off the marked trail and into an old logging road. Prints that stopped abruptly, like whatever made them had been picked up and carried away. That line stayed in my head. Then it wasn't just one scene. Reports stacked up. A pair of hikers who swore they were being watched from the tree line. An empty camp with the cooking gear still warm. A hunter who said his game run turned into being followed back to his truck. A group of kids who went into the woods for a dare and came out 2 hours later white as the clouds. None of it had a ghostly signature, no strange lights, no impossible physics. Instead, people in the woods when they shouldn't have been, and traces of other people who weren't hikers at all. On a wet Tuesday, a supply list made my stomach drop. We found a hidden plot, cleared ground, a tarp stretched between trees, stacked logs, a sleeping bag soaked with sweat, but recently used. Nearby, a crude fence and a line strung across a narrow trail at knee height. Something meant to trip a runner or slow a stranger down. I learned quickly that criminals like cover, and forests give them that cover for free. Beyond that camp, we found other things. A campsite that had been used to wash blood out of clothing, a dug pit for trash and sharp needles, and a crude shrine of items no one would leave on purpose. Half a tooth, a woman's earring. Evidence like that turns your stomach because it means someone is turning the woods into a workspace, a hidden, repeatable place to do things people don't want anyone to know about. This isn't just paranoia. Law enforcement and park agencies have reported illegal marijuana grows, hidden camps, and people using remote state land as operating bases, sometimes armed, sometimes violent. Rangers have found tents with irrigation lines, stashes of cash, booby traps meant to keep outsiders away. When territory and desperation meet, bad actors learn to use the dark. Then the worst thing happened. One of our own didn't check in. Brendan, sharp, late 20s, good with radios, left on a standard sweep and didn't call back. It's a feeling you don't get used to, that little silence on the frequency. By day 2, we'd organized a grid. We knew the terrain, the possible exit routes. By day 4, the search brought us to a place off the map, at the end of an old logging road that swallowed light. We found his patrol truck, doors unlocked, his clipboard still inside. Then we found footprints leading away and nothing that made sense until spring melted the snow and the ground gave up the truth. The incident was reported. Friends demanded answers and reforms. The woods that had been Brendan's workplace had become where he disappeared. We worked with state police, DEC investigators, and volunteers. Evidence had to be bagged and tagged. We mapped the pattern of camps, noted where irrigation hoses crossed game trails, and took GPS coordinates of every oddity. Forensic teams found traces of human activity that didn't line up with weekend campers. Deliberate cut lines, fresh tire tracks from unregistered ATVs, and, most telling, signs that someone had studied the map. Whoever it was didn't stumble into the backcountry. They'd chosen spots where the rangers' patrols were predictable and where hikers were likely to get lost. People who prey in the woods work by patterns. They watch trail registers to learn who goes where and when. They set traps to slow others down. They establish camps that look abandoned and wait. They use the forest's noise, wind, insects, streams, to hide the sounds we'd normally associate with human activity. That means a missing person can become another item on an already long list until someone who knows the woods notices the pattern and pushes back. We eventually found someone who got away. She was a young woman hiking the Devil's Path in the Catskills, trying to clear her head. She told us she'd heard someone mimicking voices on a radio, not a ghost, but a human voice, flipping channels and making deliberate sounds when the trail was quiet. Someone had tried to flag her down with a flashlight, then followed at a distance when she kept moving. She ran, fell, and crawled for 6 hours to the nearest road. What she remembered was the way one man's voice sounded like a calm authority. "Come here, I'll help you." That's the chilling part. Predators don't need to growl to be dangerous. They mimic the voice of help. If you follow the breadcrumbs, wiped boot prints, destroyed cams, irrigation lines on public land, you see a method. There are documented cases in New York and beyond where bodies have been dumped in remote brush, where remains were hidden on marshy beaches and roads far from the city, and where organized criminals used rural spaces to conceal crimes for years. Long Island's cold cases, the Gilgo Beach discoveries, are a hard reminder that people use remote areas to hide the worst things they do. It changes how you look at any abandoned lot or roadside brush. After Brendan, nothing about the woods felt the same. I used to love the quiet. Now every snap of a twig pulled my eyes towards the trees. At night, I double-checked my truck, kept the radio closer, and logged every single person I saw, because patterns matter and because the smallest log entry can save a life. I started to give other hikers advice that felt paranoid. Travel in pairs, mark your times, tell someone when you're out. Most of them laughed politely. You don't want to look crazy until you need to look smart. If you're out there, tell someone exactly where you're going and when you'll be back. Carry a charged phone and a power bank. Know the exits off a trail and what the nearest road is called. Don't trust anyone who shows up too conveniently, and if you see irrigation lines or prepped camps on public land, report them. Those things are not for weekend use. They're signs someone is building a hidden life out in the trees. If this kind of true wood horror, the human kind, keeps you awake like it does me, hit subscribe. I do deep dives into real cases, patrol stories, and the things people find when the map ends. If you want, stick around for my next video on how search and rescue finds people in terrain like this. We'll unpack the gear and the mistakes that get people lost. Here's the thing, I still can't shake. What if the person you run to for help is the person you should be running from? Would you call out for a ranger in the middle of the woods? Or would you hide and gamble that you're not being watched? Tell me what you do in the comments, because out here, the right choice can be the only difference between coming home and never being found. You've hiked a trail, right? You've gotten maybe a little lost, felt that little knot of panic? Good. Now, imagine feeling that panic 1,000 times worse. Imagine that feeling not because you are lost, but because you know, deep in your gut, that the person you're searching for is gone for a reason that has nothing to do with a wrong turn. In the New York State wilderness, the greatest predator isn't a bear or a coyote. It's the kind of person who knows exactly how fast the forest can swallow a scream. My name's Jake. I was a New York State forest ranger for 8 years, mostly up in the Adirondack Park, a place bigger than some whole U.S. states. People think of it as beautiful. Lakes, mountains, fall foliage. I see it as 5 million acres of teeth, and I've learned to respect every single one of them. This story starts in the fall of 2021, near the High Peaks region. We got a call about a missing hiker, an older guy, 72, named Arthur Vance. He was an experienced woodsman, retired, went out for a 3-day solo trek, and just missed his check-in. Standard stuff, right? People wander off, they sprain an ankle, they forget to charge their satellite phone. 99 times out of 100, we find them shivering, dehydrated, and embarrassed. But this one felt wrong from the jump. When I got to his staging site, his truck was parked perfectly at the trailhead lot off Route 73, locked, neat. No sign of a struggle, nothing stolen, but tacked to the driver's side window was a single, crisp $20 bill held down by a smooth piece of granite. That's just weird. It's too deliberate for an emergency. I radioed it in to my partner, Ranger Miller, who was organizing the search grid. He just grunted, "Just get out there, Jake." This ain't the time for trail etiquette. We started searching the marked trails, the usual spots. The first 2 days were all logistics, helicopters, K9 units, the works. Nothing. Not a scuff mark, not a dropped water bottle. Arthur Vance had vanished like a puff of smoke. On the 3rd day, the search area expanded into a section known as the Stillwater Triangle. Deep, heavy woods, mostly overgrown secondary growth that's a pain to navigate. That's where K9 Unit, an old bloodhound named Scout, started acting up. He was following a scent, but it was off. He wasn't tracking, he was avoiding. He'd stop dead, hair up on his back, and start whining, not barking, whining, and pull hard in the opposite direction. Scout had tracked dead bodies, escaped convicts, everything. He'd never acted like this before. I crouched down next to him, running a hand over his trembling back. That's when I saw the tracks. Not one pair, not deer or bear. Dozens of boot prints, pressed deep into the loam off the main trail. They were all different sizes and weights, all heading away from the marked path towards the absolute thickest, darkest part of the woods. And they were walking in a single file line, like a procession. I didn't call it in immediately. Miller would have told me it was an old scouting party, a bunch of students, something benign, but the sheer density of the tracks and the way Scout was reacting was an open hand slap to my gut. It was pure, primal, horrifying instinct. I flipped my radio to a silent channel and started following the line. The prints led me for nearly 3 miles, straight through terrain that no sane hiker would attempt. Snapped saplings, thorn bushes, a sheer mossy rock face we had to scramble up. And then, without warning, the woods opened into a small, perfectly flat clearing, sheltered on 3 sides by immense old-growth pines. And there it was, the camp. It wasn't a campsite, it was a structure, a lean-to but built with a chilling efficiency. Massive pine logs lashed together with what looked like actual rope, not paracord. It was big enough for maybe 10 people. No tent, no modern gear, just this imposing, rough-hewn structure, smelling faintly of old wood smoke and something else. Something sharp, metallic, like rust or blood. I drew my sidearm and moved slowly around the perimeter, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would echo through the trees. On the ground near the fire pit, I saw the first sign of Arthur Vance. It was his red waterproof rain jacket, neatly folded, the way you would fold a piece of laundry. It was not discarded, it was placed. Next to it, his prescription glasses resting on a flat stone, lenses facing the sky. But what got me, what made me freeze with a terror that felt cold and clinical, was what was on the fire pit. It was a massive, old-school cast-iron pot, the kind you'd hang over an open fire. It was cold now, caked with a dried gray substance, and next to the pot, stuck upright in the dirt like a bizarre flag, was a stripped deer bone, maybe a femur, filed down to a wicked sharp point. It was a tool, a weapon. I felt the hairs on my neck prickle. I spun around, weapon up, scanning the surrounding trees. I was in a bowl. Anyone standing 50 feet up those pines could watch my every move, and I realized the people who built this place, the people who were tracking, moving like a line of soldiers, they weren't lost hikers. They weren't a cult. They were feral. They were living completely off-grid, deep in the one place in New York where you could actually do it and never be found. They knew the woods better than the rangers did, and they knew how to be silent. I took 3 pictures of the camp, tucked them away, and made my retreat. I had to assume they were close, maybe watching. Getting out of there was the scariest hike of my life. Every snapped twig behind me was a footstep. Every shadow was a figure. I felt like prey, deep in the territory of something that wasn't just an animal, but a person, a terrifying, intelligent, and completely detached human being. I met up with Miller an hour later, breathless, showing him the pictures. He didn't scoff this time. He just stared, his face draining of color. "Jake," he muttered, "that fire pit? That's not a campsite, that's a kitchen. And those folded clothes? That's not a hiker getting lost, that's a disassembly. We went back in with a full tactical team. this time with a helicopter hovering just out of earshot. But when we got there, the clearing was clean. The lean-to was dismantled. The logs scattered into the brush. The fire pit was gone. Even the ash was scraped clean and scattered. There was nothing left but disturbed earth and a lingering smell of pine and something else. They had evaporated, leaving no trace. We never found Arthur Vance. We classified it as a missing person, likely exposure or a fall, but the report on the unauthorized permanent structure was filed, sealed, and forgotten. The kind of ugly truth that tourism boards don't want getting out about the gorgeous Adirondacks. But then 2 months later, in the dead of a brutal January, a new call came in. Another missing person, a young woman, 30-something, who disappeared on the Cathedral Pines Trail near the Mohawk State Forest, hundreds of miles away from the Adirondacks. I wasn't on the case, but I saw the incident report. Her car was parked at the trailhead, locked, neat, and tacked to the windshield. Held down by a smooth piece of gray-wacky rock was a single, crisp $20 bill. That's when I knew. It wasn't about the money. It was a signature, a terrifying, cold, human code. It meant, we took your person. This is their price. This is our territory. And the people who left it are still out there, deep in the dark, cold heart of the New York State wilderness, waiting for the next careless hiker to step off the trail. Look, the woods are vast. This kind of horror, human beings reverting to something primal and terrifyingly efficient, it happens all over the country. If this story chilled you to the bone, I need you to do 2 things for me right now. First, hit that subscribe button. I have another true disturbing story from a park ranger in the Olympic National Forest that makes this one look like a walk in Central Park. Second, tell me this. If you were a forest ranger and you found that solitary $20 bill and you knew exactly what it meant, would you immediately report it or would you keep it quiet, knowing that reporting it might just make you the next target they go hunting for? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay safe out there, because the wilderness doesn't care about your hiking plan. And sometimes the people in the wilderness are even worse.